Welcome to another edition of Learning Strategies, the live stream where we discuss learning strategies with no other than Kate Benson. Kate Benson is the International Director for the Society of NLP. NLP stands for Neuro Linguistic Programming. That is a made up name from the 70s of the previous century to hide the fact that we're doing hypnosis. Well, that is also the topic of today. We're going to discuss how we can use hypnosis in the learning environment, but we're going to discuss it with no other than Kate Benson. Hello, Kate.
Hello, Joost.
Good to see you again.
Good to see you too. How are you?
I'm doing great, and I saw that you have been partying a whole week.
Well, no, not all week, just one day. I can only
Yeah,
cope with one day these days. Yes, we did our festival, our annual festival trip.
good.
Yes, it was very
You went
nice.
to Glastonbury?
We went to a very small uh, festival on the Isle of Wight. So Glastonbury, it's almost impossible to get tickets for Glastonbury because they've been holding Glastonbury tickets over for 2 years now, or
Right.
3 years even.
It's the first
So
time that.
everybody who had tickets from 2019 went this year. So there was no point. It's very hard to get them anyway. And the Isle of Wight is just at the moment, because I'm waiting to have my knee sorted out.
Oh
It's just
dear.
too big and it's too much walking. So it's not much fun because it's such a long way from one venue to another venue. Whereas the Rhythm Tree is a lovely, small venue. It's very family friendly. I was very impressed. It's in a new place overlooking the Solent. So it has beautiful views of the sea and
Great.
woodlands. And it was a lovely day out, yes.
Good.
A
And
lot
now
of
we're going
reggae,
to.
a
Sorry?
lot of reggae music.
Oh, it's a
Yeah.
reggae festival.
No, it just happened there were quite a few reggae bands on. The Wailers were on later. I think that's why there were quite a few reggae bands. So yeah, and it was good.
Good. And now we're going to talk about hypnosis. Maybe my favorite topic of
Yes, your
all.
favorite topic. Yes.
So, how do you feel about it? Well, let's start with what is hypnosis?
Well, I don't do hypnosis, as you know, because I'm a teacher and I'm just not allowed to do hypnosis.
Okay.
So, hypnosis. Have you been to a festival? It's hypnosis. Well, all hypnosis is the use of language to affect consciousness, in my opinion, and that's what we do all of the time.
Right.
So we could say we all do hypnosis all of the time, or we could say none of us do hypnosis because hypnosis doesn't really exist. All there is language. And
Yeah,
so,
but there are, of course, if you let's then change the subject to trance states.
well, again, I don't think it's a case of being in trance or out of trance. I think it's a case of which trance. So
Right.
if we look at it scientifically,
Yes,
if we
let's
look
do
at
it.
what happens with well, I know you like to do this. So if we look at brain waves, for example,
Right.
we can look at, and this is very useful in terms of learning. Most teachers don't, and most parents too, when we're thinking about learning, most people don't think about how they want the student to be. So if we say we want people to be calm and relaxed, what we actually want to be doing is creating more alpha waves in the brain.
Right.
If we want them to be alert and fast and focused and on it in a very up state, then we want more beta.
Right.
And then, of course, if we want them to be really reflective and in a much sort of deeper reflective state, then we want to be moving down to delta and theta waves. So we can think about it in terms of, we don't need to know a lot about brainwaves, but we just need to know that that the state of consciousness we're in, and that's the term I prefer, state of consciousness, is influenced by, is created by electrical impulses, which create these waves in our brains. And so how do we impact on or influence those brain waves? And one of the many ways of doing it is through our language. And we do this all of the time. So for me, when I say we could say hypnosis, we could say it doesn't really matter to me whether we use the term hypnosis or not, other than it scares a lot of people off. It
Okay.
scares a lot of, I mean, lots and lots of, we've had situations where we've been teaching teachers NLP, and we've had parents, quite often psychologists, parents who are psychologists, very worried and concerned and complaining about the use of what they regard as hypnosis on their children. That's
Right.
born out of ignorance, but you still have to, for me, it's about, take the line of least resistance. And that's exactly what Richard did in creating NLP. He went, okay, they don't want me to do hypnosis. I'm not allowed to do hypnosis. So I'll create eyes closed processes and call it NLP.
Right.
So, he bypassed the resistance in that sense.
Jane is asking, is it happening right now?
Oh gosh, Jane, it might well be.
Hi Jane, good to see you
We're
again.
just chatting, we're just chit-chatting.
Okay,
So we influence, we influence these states of consciousness that people are in, and the behavior, the internal behavior, as you described it a few weeks ago,
yes.
by what we say. And people do this all the time. And I was actually just reflecting on how to make this very clear. And often it's with a sort of negative example. And I was musing as I was thinking about this morning. And we with all the care in the world as parents and as grandparents and aunts and uncles, create all these unhelpful states in kids. And my wonderful mother-in-law, that was Joan, was absolutely exquisite at this. She was one of the most loving, caring people that you could ever encounter. And as a result, she was really good at creating phobias in her children and grandchildren. So she would, and I was writing down, so I wrote down some of the things that she used to say. I was thinking about this. So, there's, and a lot of people will recognize this, especially in the UK. Don't wave that around. You'll have your eye out. That's a favorite one. Thunderstorms. Now, don't worry. There's nothing to be scared of. We'll just all get under the table so we're safe. That was one of her favorite ones. So of course, all her daughter and granddaughter are all scared of thunderstorms. There were lots of. Now this was one of my favorites. You must wear clean underwear when you go out in case you have an accident.
Right.
Not because it's a good thing to do. Because in case if you got knocked over, you got taken to hospital, it was really important to have clean underwear on.
It is important. I actually had this happen in my training in one of the prep courses, where we're doing people's self-image, and because people are nowadays so much into how they feel about themselves, they see less and less of themselves in their self-image. So I have this whole rant about we're going to invite an expressionist painter to paint the essence of you, not how you look, but the essence of you. And I used the example of one of our Dutch painters. I know he's very famous. Maybe you know him, Karel Appel. But appel also means apple in Dutch.
Yes, yeah, that's right. I was just thinking about the nice ambiguity.
I messed up, obviously, because then I asked her, where is your self-image? She said, well, it's here. And said, okay, how do you look? I am an apple. And it took me quite some time to realize, why would you think of herself as an apple? But of course, I had said, this is going to be a Karel Appel painting.
That's right, an apple painting.
It's apple. I'm an apple.
Well, you could extend that into what type of apple? Cooking apple, a Braemar, a Golden Delicious.
No. We changed it in I think she got the standard. I say holy being made out of white light, something like that.
All right. Okay. Holy being made out of white light. Yes, of course.
Getting back to the science of hypnosis. So if you look at brain scans, then there actually are three different ways that our brain acts. You have what our brain does during our waking time. And you have even more activity, somehow weirdly enough, during our sleeping time. And then there is a distinct third activity, which is trance states or trance behavior. I prefer to talk in terms of behavior, where there's actually the least amount of things happening in the brain. And of course, that's a very particular state where people have to be in. And I think that hypnosis is one of the best ways to put people in that trance state.
Oh, absolutely. I absolutely agree. And I don't know if you remember, I'm not sure if you were there that particular year, but when we used to run the NHR programs with Richard, we used to have, and I think they do now again in America, an IBVA machine, the brainwave machine. And we used to put people on the machine and then have do a double induction or a standard piece of hypnosis and just watch their brain waves change. And the amazing thing that I used to love about doing this, because Kathleen and I used to usually wire people up one evening and put it up on a big screen. And one of the amazing things, you sit there and you'd be talking to the person and taking them to a nice, relaxed, deep state, and the audience would just go completely with you, because they would probably do, a lot of them would do it anyway because they were listening to the induction, but also the fact that they're watching the brain waves, there's this sort of resonance, this sort of yogurt thing goes on, the resonance with when they look at the brain waves and their brains mirror it. Right. So that they are, so it's quite often, if we did a really good job, we'd end up with, a couple of hundred people in a lovely relaxed state, and sort of, oh well, that worked then. So there's it's great fun if you can get hold of an IBVA machine or one of the other brain. I think they've changed the name of it now, but it's great to be able to see that. And of course, that state where less is happening is the state where, Aldous Huxley called it reverie, and people have described it. Who was it? He described it as deep reflection, which is Richard stole for one of his names of one of his CDs, not stole it, borrowed it. And so those, there are different ways that people have described that state they go into. And of course, we say in our language, it reflects that. We'll say things like, oh, I don't know what to do about this, I'll sleep on it.
Right.
And quite often, people will have had the experience that they go to bed with a problem and they're not sure what to do about it. And they wake up in the morning and they know, because they've allowed their brains to work in a different way. So, of course, in terms of learning,
the sleeping state. So we have the waking activity, the sleeping activity, and trance activity.
Yes,
and
that's right.
What happens in trance activity is actually that don't look at my balding head, but there's a default network running around the top of your head that connects all the different parts of your brain, and you can see if people get into the trance mode, that the amount of data that is transported over the default network is dropping considerably much lower. And so my theory is that each part of the brain is starting to work more independent, more autonomously, and is less distracted by all the signals from the other parts of the brain. And that means that most of the time people either get really into the feeling of relaxation, or they get very good at visualizations, or maybe very clear thoughts. And so even though that's the total amount of the activity in the brain is less, somehow the different parts in the brain are being able to do some tasks much better than they are able to do without the trance mode.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I absolutely agree. And I think that one of the things that we can do as teachers and educators and parents is to utilize those processes more effectively. So one of the things that I see, for example, and I see this all the time with trainers, and this is true of NLP trainers, is that they do teachy, now we'll do trance.
Right.
Teachy, now we'll do trance. Like there's only those sort of teachy state, and then there's the trance state. And actually that is a very sort of crude way of going around teaching people. Mm-hmm. Because actually what you can do is you can think, what is the optimum state of consciousness for this activity? So for example, if people need to come up with lots of ideas really quickly, mm-hmm. And then you will have seen me do this. I wasn't actually going to talk about this today, but I am now because it's sort of come on. You'll have seen me do this on Teaching Excellence, where we want to create a lot of ideas all at one time. So we create a state of so we pitch the energy slightly up. So, the first thing that happens, we talked about all these things, is I take my energy there, and then my language follows that, and I generate a state in the other people. So this is without doing anything formal, like sit down and put your feet on the floor and relax. This is a trance state created in a sort of, if you like, a very normal way, I suppose is what I want to say. It's not taking it out of a normal reality. And then you set up a bit of competition and a time limit, and that puts people into that beta, into that sort of.
Right.
So then they go, oh, and off they go, and they create lots of activities. If you then take them and into a state of relaxation, where you do more formally say put your feet on the floor and relax, so they relax more and they go into that what you call a trance state, then you will get a different type of learning going on.
Right.
So often in businesses and in lots of organizations, all that they only ever use one. So, the classic brainstorm is the way you generate new ideas. Well, you only get one type of ideas that way.
Mm-hmm.
You want different sorts of ideas, then you do it in different ways. And some companies have recognized this in a different way. So where you have companies where they have quiet, soft furnishing corners where you can go and relax and flop, and maybe flop down with a few other people and have an unfocused conversation, then you'll get different types of ideas. So, that's what I mean when teachers are sort of, they're hypnotists, whether they know it or not. And so, that's the big picture. But then the question is, well, how do we do it?
Well, I do it differently. I try to hypnotize them as soon as possible when they come in, and then keep them hypnotized for the whole day. And then at the end of the day, wake them up.
Yes, but you're still only getting one type of learning, because what you're doing there, in a way, you're prejudiced, Jost. Is it you're saying the best learning happens in that state? So I'll get him in that.
I'm not claiming that's the best learning. I'm just claiming that is my preferred learning.
It's your preferred way because you get compliance.
Exactly.
So you want compliant, quiet. You want compliant, quiet people who say nothing and don't challenge you. You do your stuff and then you wake them up at the end. Well, that's all very well, yes, but that's more about you than them.
Yes, unfortunately, the way the things that come out of my mouth make it impossible for people not to react.
Well, so for me, it's about flexibility in our behavior, and not only just doing things one way, but doing them in lots of. I know flexibility is difficult for you, Josh. You like to find a way of and then stick to it. But so the more flexibility we have in our behavior, the better the experience that the other people have. And then so I really wanted to move on to thinking about some of the ways that we do that now. Wait,
because I still have more questions.
Okay.
And so now we have a clear idea of what I call a very strict definition of hypnosis. But I think you're talking about a much broader definition of hypnosis. And I think that Darren Brown has the best definition of that. And he says hypnosis is getting other people to play along with your script.
Well, yes, it is, but that's not very NLP, is it? Because it's not really putting the other person first. It's putting yourself there. Now, I've seen Darren Brown. I've been to see him, and it's an amazing show. He does amazing TV shows as well. And he was actually on believe it or not, he was doing his master practitioner on the same course that I did my master practitioner.
Good.
But it was before he was very famous. But people kept going there. Oh, there's a magician on the course. Oh, there's a magician on the course. So he was very quiet and nice, and he sat down and he learned he was very studious and worked very hard and did all his exercises and kept himself to himself. But of course, there's a difference between doing a magic stroke hypnosis show,
yes,
and teaching people helpful and useful stuff. And his definition works perfectly for his show. But
It
I
also
wouldn't
works perfectly for teaching.
no.
Yes. Yes.
Because it's not just, well, I know we live in a benign dictatorship, but it's actually, the thing is that, well, is your outcome, the outcome of a show, if we look at outcome, look at it in terms of welfare, the outcome of a show, or the outcomes you want for a show, is that you want to look good. Like the hypnotist and the magician want to look really, really spectacular, so people will come back and spend more money and buy the books, etc., etc. That the people go away from the show having had a good time,
right,
and being entertained, so that they go and tell their friends, who then buy more tickets for the show, and then they come back next time because it was had a good thing. So those are entirely different objectives and outcomes.
That's the show script. So that's the show script. But there's also a teaching script. So you can still say hypnosis is getting people to go along, to play along with your script, but then you use the teaching script rather than the show script.
Well, no,
it is still your script.
But the purpose is different. The purpose of a teaching session is to make sure that the person in front of you, or the group in turn, learns what's useful to them.
Exactly. So that's the script.
Well,
it's still your script.
If you want, but I'm not going to buy into that one. You can call it what you want. You can use whatever semantics you like. It doesn't meet with me. That's where I'm always drawing the distinction between what I teach and what my students learn, and what other NLP trainers teach and learn. So
definitely
not my agenda, that, and I don't particularly like that definition, although I accept it's an acceptable one.
So, but that would pretty much fall along with your story about that when you use language, you hypnotize other people. Because I think actually there is also a way of using language that dehypnotizes people. And so if you there's one way where you hypnotize people through language, which is, I think, getting people to play along with your script. And the other is where you actually are clarifying stuff, making people more critical and more alert. You're to stimulate critical thinking, what you talked about a couple of weeks ago. And that is actually gets people out of trances and into a more alert state where they're more critical.
That's why I have problems with this term trance. I think trance is a sloppy definition, because again, it implies that you're in or you're out, and that's not true. We're the trance range, i.e. the range of consciousness that we can have, is practically infinite. So it's about how precise we can be with creating exactly the state of consciousness that is useful for that person. And I definitely agree that waking people up from their their TV induced, their shopping induced, their social media induced trances is a really good thing to do. And requires different language skills. Sometimes it requires challenge for a start, and juxtaposition, and to hold the mirror up.
Right. But if you look in the brain, if you look in the brain, there's a very interesting theory by a neuroscientist called Tononi, who also happens to use the term submodalities. So now I can claim that submodalities is not something that NLP thought up, but it's actually a perfectly scientific term as used by Tononi. But he has he calls it information integration theory. I think it's not information integration theory, but data integration theory. And he shows that a network that is very capable of transporting data from one side of the network to the other will have consciousness. And then he can show that our brain is such a network. And they actually use his theory to distinguish in hospitals between people who are in a coma and people who have locked-in body syndrome. So people are actually conscious but can't use their body. And and he actually also uses hypnosis as an example where the data integration becomes less and less and less within the brain. And that's also why our level of consciousness drops. And then, of course, if it drops below a certain threshold, you're actually in the trance mode of your brain. And if you become very critical and very awake, then the data integration is increasing. You get out of the trance mode and into the critical or the waking mode. So I do think that there's a very strict boundary where you can have, how you say. And I also agree with you that within the trance mode, you can have many, I don't think it's infinite, but there are thousands of different ways that you can experience that. In the same way as you have thousands of different ways of what you can do during the waking state. But I actually do think you can get people out of a state where there is too little data integration for a critical appraisal of what is happening around them, and into a more waking mode where they are more critical.
Yes, I agree. But all I'm saying is it's a continuum. And we just and to say in or out of trance is not a useful distinction when we've got all those different trances that we could use, all those different states of consciousness that we can utilize. What's Jane saying?
We can only be the best guide we can be. We are learned yet always learning. I see both your points.
Well, that's it, Joost. You see, that's it, Jane. When Joost and I get together, it's always like this, as you're probably gathering, that we chew on an issue for a long time until I give up, usually.
No, until your brain becomes in the critical mode, and then you see the highly likelihood of what I'm saying.
I'm not buying into your script.
He's actually right.
No. Sometimes I say that just because I think it's time to move on, and it's it's like Richard says, would you rather be right or happy? And I'd usually rather be happy.
Yeah, I'd rather be right. So that's.
I know you would.
So let's try a different tech. So there's a difference between the Milton model and the meta model, right?
Yeah, there is. Yes.
And so, in my view, the meta model is used to clarify stuff, to make people more critical, and get them less suggestibility in them.
Yeah.
And the Milton model does the opposite. It's actually used to get people to become more easy to influence them and increase the level of suggestibility.
Yes, absolutely. I absolutely agree with you on that. And I think that's exactly it. So we use the meta model to challenge unhelpful thinking or unhelpful thought processes or unhelpful trances. And we use the Milton model to create helpful trances.
Right. And so we have this spectrum of, on the one side, you have maximum Milton language, where just hypnotizing people all the way around, and it really doesn't matter that much. And on the other side, we have maximum meta model language, where we are as clear and clarifying and critical as possible. And I agree with you that there's a continuum, but I disagree with you that on this side, on the meta model side, we can still talk about trance.
No, I wouldn't talk about trance. My problem is you're not hearing what I'm saying. You're mansplaining, Joost. You're starting to mansplain. I wouldn't, because what my argument is, my challenge is that I don't find the term trance a very useful one.
Right.
Because I'd rather talk about states of consciousness.
Okay. Then I'll just reframe the whole argument. So here we have, on the Milton model side, we have a state of conscious that is characterized by being highly influenceable and suggestibility, high suggestibility. And here on the meta model side, we have a state of conscious that is characterized by being very critical, clarifying, and less suggestibility. Can we agree with that?
Yes.
Good. So there has to be somewhere a boundary where you leave the suggestibility area.
No. It's only if you see it as a continuum like that. I'm going to give you a different metaphor, right? So I use my crystal ball. So here you have the complete state of consciousness. I'm doing this as a circle now.
Okay.
I like a visual aid. Here we are.
Yeah. So you have to repeat.
Handy. Look, I have this handy. This is a really good visual aid.
Wait.
Listen.
No. My audio dropped out, so you have to repeat what you said before, because I was really intrigued by the triangle.
This is it. No, it wasn't a triangle. I was trying to create a globe.
Okay.
Not a triangle. I was trying to create a globe. So this is my visual aid, right? I'm making this up on the fly because I've just thought about this as I picked it up.
Good.
Utilization is good. So here is the state of consciousness.
Right.
Somewhere on your continuum.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But within that, you could have, if you like, you could have sort of total relaxation, no thinking going on, absolutely, like zonked, unconscious of, the state that Richard likes his assistants in, really, at the back of the room, right?
A dreamless sleep.
Complete.
Sleep-like state.
Yeah, just nothing happening. Lights on, nobody home, right? Which it's lovely. It's lovely, and it's lovely that's a lovely state if you want to just drop in some really good suggestions for people about what they're going.
Well, the last time I did it,
you get all of the conscious stuff out of the way, and you're just talking almost directly to the unconscious mind.
Well,
but
the
that's
last time
not
I did
something you generally do in teaching. What I might want is I want this nice relaxed state, but I've got a strata in here that's a degree of foci that's running around. So I don't want people to think about anything else except for this one thing that's running around. Now, so most of this is over on that side in your Milton analogy, but there's a little bit here that I'm running through, which has got the meta model analogy running through it. Yes. So you can have, it could be like a little spotlight within it. Now that spotlight could be bigger or smaller or so the proportion might differ. Mm-hmm. Now, most people, so if I give you another metaphor, another example, for example, a lot of people who come into adult education, so I'm just going to I have to bend down to put this down, because if I drop it, it'll go through the floor. It's very heavy. It is.
Oops.
So a lot of people who come into adult education, for example, and sometimes some of our listeners might identify with this, get quite stressed because all of their experience that they bring with them is unpleasant from school or whatever. So they come in all tense and anxious because with expectations about what it's going to be like. And this is quite a difficult one to overcome, because if you take those people into an entirely different learning environment, so nothing that vaguely looks like a classroom or a training room, no tables, no chairs, whatever. Say you had bean bags, for example, or something like that, and you took them in there, they will object, because it doesn't fit with their representation of learning and learning environment or a teaching environment. So that's too far one way for them. So they'll just go like, and it's also outside of, it's because it's outside of their experience. It's outside of what we call the zone of proximity, what we understand and can cope with. Right. So that's like taking them all the way into that Milton position, if you like, where they go, well, I could relax here, but there's no learning's going to happen, because this isn't to teach. This is not how you do learning. Whereas if you put them at the other end of the scale, where you put them in something that they recognize as a learning environment, you increase their stress level because they expect it to be horrible like it was before. Yes. So you have to work, either you put them with the bean bags, and then you use some clarification to get them to see that you can learn in that situation, or you put them in the training room, which you've already got, and you use some relaxation to get them out of their anxiety and whatever. So all the time you're juxtaposing and thinking about how much of one or the other do I want for these learners in this situation.
I agree with you on that point, absolutely. At the same
Oh my
time,
goodness, Joost agrees
yeah,
with me.
no,
That's
I
the
don't think that
fourth time. How long have I known you? 20 years. I think that's the fourth time. Oh no, actually, no. You said you agree. You didn't say I was right.
exactly, because I think you just made my point. But
Okay, of course.
because at every description that you gave in both examples, there is a level of suggestibility that people have, and
Yes.
and I think that there is a difference between well, having high suggestibility and having low suggestibility. It depends on the person, but it also depends on the environment, like you explained with the beanbags or the formal training room. It depends on what the trainer or the teacher is doing, how he uses his energy, and especially because we know that it's pretty much an innate, I say, variable of people, their level of suggestibility. But you can increase even with someone who's very critical and hyper alert and has very low suggestibility. You can still increase that by using Milton language and stuff. And you can, but if someone is very highly suggestibility, scores high on suggestibility, you can decrease it for being critical and introducing meta-model stuff. But there is basically a level of how easy they are to being to take
Oh
a
yeah,
suggestion.
absolutely. I agree with that. And some people
Yeah.
are much more influenceable, suggestible than other people are.
And I think that there is a low level at a certain point where it's pointless to talk about the suggestibility. Then you can much better talk in terms of criticability. How good are they at critical thinking?
Yeah, could
Yeah.
be. Right, well, now we've chewed the cud on that one for half an hour to the point where people will be going like, so, well, how do I do this? You know, this is our. You love to talk about these things for ages. After half an hour, I want to do something more practical.
Good. Well, you gave me 36 minutes, so
I
now
know that was a long time. I
now
was
you
like,
get 24 minutes of doing practical stuff.
I have another example. I've got another prop here.
It's the 10 commands.
No, it's Irish actually. It's got a dolma on it.
Okay. I thought,
This
but
was
is it
given to
stone?
me. Pardon?
Is it the stone stuff? What kind of
Well,
material is it?
I don't know. It's a plaque for the wall,
Good.
and it fell off the wall. So when things like that happen in my study, I usually think there's a message in there to my subconscious.
It's a sign of God, or you have to call the exorcist.
No, I said it's a message to my unconscious.
Okay.
I didn't mention God or the devil or any of those things, Joost. So this is just one. Actually, this was given to me by Paula Bangler, and it's one of those lovely things. It's how suggestions of hypnosis or suggestibility is built into our language, and of course, in the Irish use of English or the use of Irish, is much more naturally eloquent at this. And this is an Irish saying, and it says, always remember to forget the friends that proved untrue, but never forget to remember those that have stuck by you.
Right. Very good.
And it's got a lovely, the forget to remember to forget in there, which is a lovely piece of trance-inducing, consciousness relaxing language. So that fell off the wall. So that was my introduction to some of the patterns that we can use. And we won't get through them all, but I think it's useful just to give some people some examples of what we're talking about and how we do this, and how we change people's states of consciousness is a building block process. So just using Milton language, language patterns isn't enough. In fact, I've heard some of the least trance-inducing. Anybody goes on one of these sites where you can listen to lots of different hypnotic inductions, you know, and sometimes it's simply the tone of voice of the person is just not going to work. Other people can be reading the Financial Times and send you into a trance because they have just the right sort of voice to use.
Yes.
Other people could be using the best language patterns possible. They'll never get you into trance because their voice just doesn't
I
do
did
it.
I did find out another practical instrument with my students is that I now put out in Dutch, unfortunately for all the English speaker, but I have a daily hypnotic meditation. I'm trying to create a 365.
Mm.
I'm currently at 254, and now it's becoming very difficult to create the other 111 that are still left. Um, but nevertheless, I now get students in my training programs who have listened like 100 or 150 of these hypnotic meditations. And they basically, so when I was doing the prep course and did the first the hypnotic demonstration, it went amazing. So I said, okay, and I was already I was just doing the I say the preparation talk. So of course, that's also part of the hypnosis. But I was just saying, oh, we're going to talk about something, and you can listen to what I have to say. But if I say weird stuff, you can do something else that you like to do. And she was already going. Because and I asked later. I asked her when I woke her up again. Said, "Well, this went with also arm levitation with whoop." Everything worked perfectly with her. And I asked her, "How come did it? Um, have you done stuff with hypnosis before?" That's often the case when you have such a good
No,
subject.
no. I've only listened to your I've only listened to your tape
Yes.
shows. I've
She
done
said, "No,
nothing
I've
else.
never done
I've just
hypnosis,
listened to
but I did listen to 150 of those hypnotic meditations." And now she's just so cute to my voice. It has become a anchor.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
now just hearing my voice, she goes, "Ugh."
You pick the phone up and go, hello, you're speaking. And she goes like that.
Exactly.
Well, I remember, but again, there are ways of doing that which are cue to your voice, absolutely. But there are also, but you can also create states, trance states, which in a way you're doing by presupposition, by presupposing what's going to be happening. And my example of this, inadvertently, didn't realize it, a bit like you doing your 365 trances, was in getting people ready to do the altered states, shamanic states, and basic brain exploration. So the first thing that happens is that, as I said in a previous one, the title itself is a mini induction.
Right.
Because it's such a ridiculous title. By the time you get to it, the end of it, it's like, what? It's just a long sentence that doesn't have, Milton would have loved it, because it doesn't really do anything, say anything.
Yes.
So people go to the end of it, and if they go like, wow, that sounds really cool, and it generates some curiosity, they move to the next stage. If they go like, oh, that's just stupid, and so you filter out. So you so you can get people into certain states of consciousness simply by your filtering or your gatekeeping. Which is in a way what you're doing. You've probably filtered out quite a lot of people who've listened to one of your tapes and gone like, I can't be doing that. So they don't even bother coming back. So that's your first gate.
That's also the content of the podcast are, if you're
well
one of the 1% most extraordinary special persons on the planet Earth, stop listening, go away.
Yeah, that's right. So the first thing was like the title, and then of course they had to it said, you have to apply to get on this course. You can't just you fill your form in, and then you're accepted on your course. You don't automatically get the thing. So I would talk to people, and they had to have some experience of hypnosis or NLP with Richard or some other sort of training. It might have been hypnosis training, it might have been martial arts. We used to get quite a lot of martial arts people. So there was this very steps, and they'd have to talk to me, and I would put lots of them off and whatever. And the first time we did it, Richard walked into the back of the room when they'd all come in and they all sat down, they're all waiting, and he said to me, Jesus, Kate, what have you done to them? And he said, and I said, what do you mean? He said, well, they're already in trance. He said, my life is going to be so easy. And they literally were, because their expectation had set up so much that they went, and of course we had a bit of music playing as well, and the lights were low and whatever. So by the time Richard got on the stage, they were sort of, they're almost like that,
Right.
So there's a lot of things you can do to presuppose it. So, environment, you manage all these different variables. So, you manage the environment, you manage the temperature, the light levels, all of those things. Before you get to the language itself. So I think a lot of people don't realize how many other variables are involved in creating states of consciousness. And of course, the other things is to pay attention to what the other people are, what's happening to them. Because if we are out of sync with them, if we're out of rapport with them, or we're not pacing them, that's what the term we use in NLP, then we can set up dissonance by asking their unconscious or their conscious mind to do something that isn't aligned with what they're thinking and feeling. So that whole paying attention thing is quite crucial too.
Good. We can do a whole episode on rapport.
Yeah, we could do. Yeah, on rapport. Yeah, we could do another time.
Good topic for next week.
Well, okay, I've got a topic for next week, I think.
But topic for next week?
Well, I can't remember. I'll tell you in a minute. I pulled. Oh no, we about praise.
Okay.
Remember that about praising, because we touched upon it about praising for effort, not for intelligence. And I've got a whole other piece of work on that.
Good.
How parents can do that. But then we've got the language patterns, which is an area you absolutely love, Joost.
Come again?
I said we ought to just touch on some of the Milton patterns, which I know is an area that you love, so that people get some examples of what the sort of things that they can say and do that help to influence people in that way. And there are lots that parents and teachers do now, which they can just change around to have, instead of having a negative effect or an unhelpful effect, can have a helpful effect. Some of them we've talked about already. We talked about the other day about negative commands and negative questions.
Exactly, yes.
So we were saying don't have too much fun doing this.
Exactly. Negate the positive rather than the negative.
That's right, yeah. So I'm trying to think of which other ones we've used so far. I mean, there's all sorts of...
well, we have touched upon...
the quotes pattern was the other one we talked about, sorry.
Yes. We touched upon commands. So I think the by far the number one most influential hypnotic language pattern is the embedded command. If you don't use the embedded command, then you are hindering yourself. I think our suggestions are only good suggestions if it has a embedded command in it. So
you go that far, would you? Mm. So an example of embedded command, so people know, is where you've got the command, which might be learn now.
Right.
That might be learn this now. That's the command. But what we're saying is we then embed it in something so that the person bypasses any potential resistance to it. So I don't know how easily you can learn now.
Exactly.
Is an embedded command, because within the sentence is that bit that's hidden in there, so it's embedded in it. So with a question it might be also, how easily can you learn now? I'm not sure how easily you can learn, or can you tell me how easily you can learn now?
We could do a whole hour on embedded commands.
Well, we could do a whole hour on it.
I think it's very interesting because people are very paradoxical about it, or on two different footings. I'm not sure how you say it in English, but because they look for leadership, they look for clarity, they want to be clear about what they need to do, but they hate to be commanded. And they also, because they hate to be commanded themselves, they feel that they are very reluctant to command other people. And the issue is that our conscious mind only recognizes command if it's the first word in the sentence. So as soon as you put it somewhere else in the sentence, the conscious mind doesn't recognize it as a command. And people are perfectly happy. They have leadership, they have clarity, they know what to do, and they love it. Nevertheless, people feel constrained about commanding others. And so that's what I teach them to... I say...
hide them.
Command others! You have to command them!
Well, you do, but also it's, you can buy compliance along the way. I mean, I do this. We were just talking about this recently at our youth club. Now, we want the children to have fun. They learn stuff by default when they're there, but we also need them to be safe. And sometimes being safe, and so I had a situation where they were out with me and we were in a safe area in a field, and then they got to the gate which led onto the car park, and my instruction to them was to wait at the gate. And they sort of went and waited at the gate, and then 3 or 4 of them started to sort of mill around on the other side of the gate, which was not safe. So when I got to them, I said, like, whatever. So I say a number of things. And so my thing is always to give the command and then use the please and thank you. But I do something else so I get their attention really quickly. I sometimes can't mess about doing, I was wondering if you could all just look this way now, please, right? Because,
Right.
When you're dealing with little children, by the time you've got, I'm wondering if you can, they're all over there. So you have to get your command in at the beginning. So I usually go, eyes on me. So that's because it's a really simple thing. All they have to do is turn and look. Or I'll say, see here, which of course is a lovely ambiguity as well. Sorry, because it goes see here, but it also goes see here. So that you're asking them to look and listen. So
and if you're on an island, there's sea here.
See here, yeah, see here, over there. Yes, that's right. And then what I give them I give them the instruction, and I'll use an embedded command in a slightly different way. I might say, or might make it into a question. So I will say, who can remember that you are? So who can remember that you were supposed to stop at the gate? So the message is you were supposed to stop at the gate.
Yes.
But I said, who can remember? Because that then stops them being quite so resistant to it, because then I'm asking them to do so. So somebody always goes, me. So you remembered. Well, so then I go, well done. You remembered that we were to stop at the gate. Who can tell me why?
Right.
And then somebody will say, because it's a safe, don't I? Well done. So straight away, I'm rewarding them. Mm-hmm. Even though they've all done something wrong, they've all gone through the gate when they shouldn't have done. I'm rewarding them for the behavior that I did want them to have.
Right. Like we talked about last week.
Yeah, but it's also, it's wheels within wheels. It's also about embedding instructions in conversations in a different way from what we would use with a traditional hypnosis one, is what I'm saying. So you can use the I am wondering if and all of those things, but you can actually embed what you want in a different way in different types of conversations. So I will always look for the compliance, i.e. to get buy-in for them, to have something they can agree with me on, even though I'm asking them to do something differently. And even though in a way they're being told off for it, for what they did do.
Right.
Or they're being pulled up for what they did do.
But you can have perfect embedded commands in questions, especially when you use analog marking to make them sound as commands.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what I say, is who can remember that we were supposed to stop at the gate?
Remember! Who can remember?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So all of those things, you can make it twice. You can say, who can remember to wait at the gate?
That's right. Well, I do it a little bit like that, but you can imagine.
But you can see how good I am with little children.
I can see how experienced you are.
Yes. Somehow.
But actually, interestingly, then the next week we went, and then there's somebody else says, so then I said, so what's going to happen next time? And we're all going to wait at the gate. And I also say, yeah, that's right. And what's going to happen if we don't? So that's where we also have the like you don't get to come to the farm thing. But they it's just different. It's just to really open up the idea that there are different ways of embedding questions and commands other than the ones that are written in the books, I suppose.
Right.
And,
yes.
For me, using NLP is about being creative, but also noticing what works and then figuring out why it works.
Right.
So I've used that pattern for quite a long time, but I didn't realize necessarily that was a way that was an embedded command. It was just what worked.
Yeah. No, I'm always in favor of flexibility. That's creativity, flexibility, building up variety. That's
No, you're
basically
not.
that's
No,
my middle
you're
name.
not.
Yeah,
You're
I
not
am.
in favour of
I embrace the TOTI model completely. I have to do the TOTI model always according to the rules of the TOTI model. That implies lots of flexibility.
Yes. We do it this way.
Yes, well, the TOTI model is the only way to do it, of course.
Right, so there's embedded commands and embedded questions, well, quotes patterns we talked about. What else? What other ones have we got that we could?
Well, I'm always very much in favor of the modal operators of necessity and impossibility. You have to do this,
Necessity and
or you cannot do anything else.
Necessity and impossibility. I quite like that one.
Yes, that's how they should be called.
About that one as well. So we've actually talked over the last few weeks about quite a few of these
Yes.
patterns, but we haven't sort of brought them out and said obviously what they were. And if you read, people want to learn these. It's really an easy way is to look at the stories that you're reading for your children, because they're stuffed with these.
I never understand why parents have trouble getting their kids to sleep. And then I say, how would you do it? I said, just bring them to bed. Tell them when you don't fall asleep, because we're going to do hypnosis. I'm going to put you into a hypnotic trance, and don't fall asleep before I'm ready. And then you hypnotize them. Hypnotizing children, except for those few who has ADHD, I thought they are very difficult to hypnotize. But my standard way to hypnotize small children is just saying, okay, have there ever been a time when you were laying in your bed in the morning, your mother was screaming at you down the stairs about, you have to get out of the bed, you have to get out of the bed, you have to go to school, and you just wanted to turn around and fall asleep again. And they all go, except for the ADHD kids that said, no, I never have that. No, I never. I always awake at 6 o'clock, and then I'm going to jump on the bed of my parents, and my parents say, go to bed, but say, no, we're going to do this stuff. Those are very hard to hypnotize, but all the others, as simple as that. And then
that is really quite interesting. That is quite interesting. We ought to do a whole thing on ADHD and hypnosis with kids like that, because that's quite a useful one for quite a few people. But I think the other thing, anybody who's old enough or likes old movies is to watch the original Mary Poppins, because there's a song in there. It says, "Stay awake, don't go to sleep," and all the words are about staying awake, children not wanting, but it's in this lullaby voice, and it's another, it's a really good example of hypnosis in action, and using negative commands and all of those patterns in there, but also the tone of voice and the energy around it, which
Mary Poppins.
Mary Poppins.
That has to be the number one teaching tool within NLP.
Well, I don't know. She's just lots of things right, Mary Poppins, and she's also very magical.
There you go.
She's very magical. She is. Yeah.
Okay, so we come to the end of our talk. It's almost 2 o'clock. Are there any questions by our lovely audience?
They've been very quiet today.
Yeah, well, I haven't put everything on the screen, because some people are complaining that we are doing witchcraft.
Are they? Oh well, they're entitled to their opinions. Only I have to say I'm not a witch.
Yeah, good. Me neither.
Me neither. I can be accused of lots of things, but that's not one of them.
Right. Do you remember what we're going to talk about next week?
Yes, we're going to talk about. Well, either we got a choice actually. What did you say? I said I was going to talk about praise and effort.
Oh, yeah, praise. Sorry, I forgot. Now, praise is an excellent topic.
Because we sort of talked about it a little bit. We raised it the other week, but I thought, there's more to say on that.
It's a good thing that I want to put it in my diary because we are going to have to skip 2 weeks.
Oh, are we? Okay,
Yes,
that's good.
I have to teach 10 days of football behavior management at the VU University. That is 10 full days of doing
Wow.
everything, applying everything, NLP and all the other stuff that I do to the world of football.
So we have no for 2 weeks.
2 weeks, there's no stream. The next stream will be in August. It will be August 2, and we will talk about praise.
Okay. We might change that because it's the summer holidays. So maybe we'll talk about something that's more to do with less to do. I don't know. We'll see. We'll
We'll
one
see.
or the other. I'll have a think and let you know, and then you can put it out for people, Joost.
I will. Excellent. Well, thank you very much for watching. And those people who are watching it later, you can always join us on Twitch, or twitch.tv/Joost van der Leij. And then you can participate and let us know what you think. For now, bye.
Bye-bye.
Kate, thank you very much. And we'll
Thank
see
you,
you in
Joost.
2 weeks' time.
See you in 2 weeks. Bye.
Bye-bye.